Hello, everyone. I am sorry that I haven't posted anything on my YouTube channel in quite a while. There is a reason for that. I was diagnosed with urethra and bladder cancer, and I have been on a Foley catheter since July of this year, and I have to go in and have the Foley catheter changed out, which is very painful. I've been going through a lot of tests, seeing a lot of different doctors. I have actually been going through this since October of last year. It's just that they kept on diagnosing it as a UTI, and they kept treating it as a UTI, and the treatment never worked. Things didn't get better. Things just kept on, progressing and getting worse. And my urine stream, wasn't as strong. It was getting worse and worse. Then turned around and got to where I wasn't able, to pee. So they turned around and they put a Foley catheter on me last year. And then they removed it, and I was urinating on my own. And then, even though I was urinating on my own, it still wasn't a strong urine stream. It still was weak. And we went right back, and I started bleeding, down there. And it wasn't menstrual or anything because I've had a complete hysterectomy. So I haven't had, a period in a long time. Okay. So, and that was an alarm there too. Well, they turned around and started, treating it as a UTI again, and gave me stronger antibiotics and stronger treatments. And I was drinking lots of water, cranberry juice. I also was even sitting there and doing, taking vaginal, supplements to help, with that as well. Nothing was working. And it got to where I was, barely even urinating. When I would have the bad urge that I would have to urinate. And when I'd go to the bathroom, very little would come out. So I went to see my urologist specialist, and my urologist specialist turned around and told me that I have OAB, overactive bladder disorder. So gave me a prescription for medication for OAB. And I was taking it, and it wasn't getting any better. I wasn't seeing any changes. I was constantly reporting to my urologist specialist that the treatments wasn't working, things wasn't getting better, things was getting worse and everything. And still, nobody was listening to me. I found it very frustrating situation, because it's one of those things to where you're sitting there and you're trying to get heard, but nobody is listening to you. And finally, I went to go see my gynecologist, my OBGYN. And during my physical examination, she felt a hard mass. And she turned around and was looking up in there, and she turned around and went and got another, doctor to come in there to take a look to make sure that what she was seeing was really what she was seeing. And that doctor confirmed, that she was, correct. So then they had me to set up on the bed, and my gynecologist, my OBGYN, she turned around and she told me that I have a hard mass inside of my urethra, and that there is nothing that they can do on their end because it has nothing to do with them, and I needed to go see a urologist specialist. Well, I told her that I already have a urologist specialist, and she wanted to know my urologist, doctor's name, so I gave it. And I called my urologist and told them I needed to come in for an appointment and what all happened and went on and what my, OBGYN said and her findings and all of that. So they set me into an appointment, and I went in there, and then they turned around and Dr. Allen, he examined me, and he turned around and he felt the hard mass, and he was sitting there squeezing, as hard as they can. And ladies, let me tell you, it was so painful. Okay. And so hurting so bad that I was in tears. Okay. And he said the reason why that he was sitting there squeezing so hard is he wanted to see, if it was soft, or if it was, really, really hard. Well, come and find out, it was really, really hard. He couldn't get it to move, and it wasn't soft. So then I ended up going in and having a outpatient procedure done, to where they went up there with a camera and tools and took a biopsy of the mass. And it was done as an outpatient. And then the test results came back from the biopsy. Well, the first, my original urologist told me that it was cancer, and he sent me to a urologist, surgeon that he's partnered with in the same building. So I went and seen the second urologist doctor, and he turned around and he told me something he turned around and said he didn't agree with, Dr. Allen's, verdict, let's just say, about the test results. So he turned around and had the biopsy tissue sent, off again to sit there and have his test, run on it. And then the test results came back, and when the test results came back, he turned around and he told me that, it was non-cancerous. So now I'm sitting here and I'm confused, because I'm sitting here and I've got these doctors telling me different things. Then I turned around and I seen a third urologist doctor at Baptist Hospital here in Little Rock, Arkansas. And the urologist specialist there that was on call that night turned around and said that I have a very rare condition, that bladder cancer is known. Everybody knows about bladder cancer. But he said that the type of cancer that I have is very, very rare, and not very much is known about it, and not too many people get diagnosed with it. His exact words was, it's like less than 3,000 people get diagnosed with this type of rare cancer. So now I'm back up and I'm sitting here and I'm wrapping my head around, okay, I've got cancer, again. And sitting here having to deal with this is, here goes the roller coaster ride. And then I go back to see the other urologist that told me I didn't have cancer. he looks at all the tests and everything that was done at the hospital, and then he turns around and he gets frustrated, and he turns around and sends me to UAMS, and he says, I'm going to refer you to go see the urologist oncology, specialist over there at UAMS Hospital here in Little Rock. He said, and they, well trained. They know all the new techniques. They know all the new, procedures and all of that. Whereas, here we don't, but they stay up to date over there. I'm like, okay. So he said that he's going to send all of my test, results and everything that has been going on to the urologist oncology doctor at UAMS Hospital. So I was like, okay. So he said, all you have to do is just show up at the appointment. I'm like, all right. So I turned around and I went to UAMS Hospital and seen the urology oncology doctor there. Well, come and find out I do have cancer. And yes, it is a very rare cancer. And I ended up getting to where I could not urinate again. And I had to be put back on the Foley catheter back in July of this year. And I'm still on the Foley catheter. And I'm sorry. It doesn't matter how much you prepare yourself or try and prepare yourself. It's still a scary thing because this isn't like a cancer that is known and a lot of people are diagnosed with. My cancer is very rare and not too many people are diagnosed with this type of cancer. So I kind of got the double whammy with the cancer on this because it's not just bladder cancer. I also have urethra cancer too. And I've just been trying to take it all in and soak it all in, And it hasn't been easy. And I know this has been a long video, but there's a lot of information and a lot of things to tell you guys, about everything. So I hope that you're being patient and is sticking with me through this. So I have been preparing to get ready to go in and have surgery. And finally got with a doctor that actually was able to answer my questions and really give me thorough information and actually took the time to listen to me, my worries, my concerns, and, address, all of that. And, sit there and actually explained it in a way that I could understand. And I appreciated that. And he even brought up the pictures and the scans and all of that was done and did his little circles on this area and that area. And this is what's going on here and going on there. And I really appreciated that because none of the other doctors did that. I felt like, that I was just like somebody that, was an experiment. And everybody just wanted to sit here and just do tests, CTs, MRIs, bladder scans, just throwing, antibiotics at it. starting at, a low antibiotic and then going to the strongest, antibiotics, and then treating it as OAB. And, how can somebody have, OAB when they can barely even, urinate and not even urinate at all? I mean, come on. None of this was making any sense to me, and finally I got a doctor that could explain it, and I'm really thankful to God that I finally came across somebody that really was able to do that for me. And now surgery is scheduled, and I'm going to be having surgery, and my urethra and my bladder is going to be removed. Part of my intestine is going to be removed, and some of my intestine is going to be used to set up a new direction for my urine to go from my kidneys into a stoma bag that will be attached to the right side of my stomach. And plus my lymph nodes, both my lymph node down there in that area is also going to be removed. So I'll be on a drain tube, so to keep the drainage and everything off until that all heals. Surgery, the doctor told me the surgery is going to take 6 to 7 hours for the surgery. He also informed me that this is a life-threatening cancer and there is a possibility of death for me. My survival percentage for surviving this surgery is 50% chance survival. But I believe in God, and I know and I believe that He's going to be watching over me during all of this and while I'm going through all of this. And I know that I am strong enough to survive this and make it through this and to do this. I know how strong of a person I am, and I know what I'm capable of. I have been through so much already, and I have survived so much already. I mean, I had COVID back in, when it first came out. And my family was constantly being told that I was going to die. That I was going to die, that I wasn't going to make it. I couldn't breathe on my own, nothing. I was on machines breathing for me and stuff. And I made it through all of that. So I know the strength that I have. But ladies, this type of cancer, the symptoms, the early symptoms of it come off as a UTI when it's not. But because of the symptoms, the first thing that the doctors go through, it's a UTI. They're going to, have you to pee in a cup. They're going to turn around and say that you got a UTI. They're going to turn around and, have you to pee in a cup, and it's not going to show that you have, a UTI. They're going to send it off, for another test to be done on the urine. And then they'll turn around and say that, that you have a UTI. And they're going to treat it with antibiotics, with pills, and having you to drink this, drink that, be on this special diet and everything to treat, it as a UTI. But it's not going to be a UTI. But this cancer that I have is so rare that the doctor said that that's the first thing that they think of. When it comes to women, to females, the first go-to is UTI. These are symptoms, of UTI. You don't necessarily have to have the, you don't have the burning. You don't have the itching, you don't have that discomfort. You may not have that. Also, there'll be bleeding, mucus, it'll come off as just, a UTI. Because everything on the tests that they run is going to show UTI, UTI, UTI. And then finally, as it advances, you're going to get to where you're going to get a weak urine stream, to where you're going to see, to where you go to the bathroom, and instead of being, when you urinate, it's going to be like a, not so massive and hard of a urine stream. Then it's the next stage from that is it's going to get to where you're going to have this incredible urge to have to urinate. And every time you go to the bathroom, very little urine is going to come out. And you're going to be like, oh, well, what is going on? And ladies, let me tell you, okay, it doesn't matter how many times you go to the doctor. It doesn't matter how many times you go to the hospital. Every time they are going to say that you have a UTI infection, and that's how they're going to treat it. Been going through all of this whole time. And then you get to where you can't urinate at all. No urination. Ladies, it is painful. When you cannot urinate, it is painful. Oh my goodness. I would much rather be in labor and have childbirth than to go through that kind of pain with not being able to urinate. I got to that point and was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. And when I got there, they did a ultrasound of my bladder. And I had 800 in my bladder. That is bad. Really bad. That's when I got the Foley catheter the first time, back in October of last year. Then the second time that I got to where I couldn't urinate again and was rushed to the Baptist hospital a second time because of not being able to urinate. And they turned around and took an ultrasound again of my bladder, and I had 900. 900. That is fluid inside of my bladder, urine fluid inside my bladder. That's way, way too much to have in your bladder, ladies. It's way too much. I was at the urge of my bladder, exploding, which wouldn't have been a good thing. So once again, in July is where this happened again, and I've had the Foley catheter ever since. And like I said, I've been going through this roller coaster ride with all these doctors, getting all these different opinions. And ladies, let me tell you, it doesn't matter how many different, doctors that you see, okay, and opinions that you get. you're going to hear different opinions on everything. From every different doctor you go to is going to have a different opinion about it. And this is just because this kind of cancer is so rare. And when it comes to females with urinary cancer and bladder cancer, with men, if men was to go in and have these symptoms, boom, automatically caught, and diagnosed. But as a woman, it's different for us, because when we go in with those symptoms, doctors just automatically say, UTI, and they treat it as such. And this will go on for a while until doctors are finally like, okay, we've tried everything. We started from here, and now we're to here, and now this is the point we're at. So nothing we're doing is working. So then that's when they finally go in and they actually do the test. They, and they sit there and actually try and figure out what's going on, and boom, that's how it gets found. But until then, you're on this long roller coaster ride, and it's frustrating, and it's irritating, and it's overwhelming, because you got, you're sitting here having to hear that you have cancer and it could kill you, and then you're going back down to the next doctor. No, it's not cancerous. It's not cancerous. And then at the end of the road, anyway, for me, ended up being cancer, and a very rare cancer. And so, yeah. So that's what's been going on with me. And ladies, trust your body. You know your body more than anybody else knows your body. Okay? If the doctor is telling you one thing and the treatment isn't working, tell your doctor. Be vocal about it. Don't let the doctor say, oh, well, it's okay. We just have to do another round of antibiotic. No. Come on. Don't do that, ladies. You know your body. Okay. If things are not getting better, then that's because the treatment is the wrong treatment. There's something more going on. We as women have to be very vocal about our bodies and what's going on with us. Okay? And if we are not going to use our voices and be vocal about it, then doctors are just going to keep on, stringing us along with having us to take this medicine and this kind of treatments, and it's constantly not working, and we're just sitting back, okay. You're the doctor. Yes, they're the doctor, but it's your body, okay? And if anybody knows your body, it's you. You know your body better than any doctor knows your body, all right? So therefore, you know when something is wrong and not right. And if the treatments that the doctor is giving you is not working and you're not getting better, be very vocal about this, ladies. Please. Just because they're a doctor doesn't mean that they are right, okay? Look at what I just told you. Everything that I've been going through with this, all right? It never was a UTI. All these doctors was treating it as a UTI, and it wasn't even a UTI. It was cancer. It was a big, hard mass. And because of it not being found early, it turned around and got extremely bad. Now the mass covers and blocks my whole urethra. And it has traveled all the way up my urethra. And it has gotten into my bladder. Now, if they would have not treated it as just a UTI, if they would have been like, okay, it's been 2 rounds of antibiotics and it hasn't gotten any better, and would have went in to do more tests, then they would have found it. If they would have done a CT or MRI scan with and without the contrast, back last year, if they would have done that last year with the lower, with my lower vicinity, with my pelvic and everything, if they would have did a MRI or a CT with and without the contrast of my pelvic area and stomach area, they would have found it last year. But they didn't do that. They just kept treating it as a UTI. So the longer that it goes, the worse it gets. And by the time that they finally decided to do something, this is where I'm at. Finally, since October of last year, I'm finally been diagnosed with a very rare cancer and going to have to go through major surgery. And it's going to be a long road, a long recovery. So yeah,